Well, hello guys. So today we will talk about Mistborn. We will give both spoiler and non-spoiler review. So let's start with the non-spoiler review. Mistborn is my new favorite thing, and Ellen, Wynne, and Kelsier are my all-time favorite characters. Now, Mistborn is a fantasy world where the Dark Lord has won. In short, it's just a mature One Piece. Just like One Piece, there is a tyrant ruler and noble families who rule over the people known as Ska. We also have thugs and gangs. But we follow this small revolutionary group led by Kelsier. Now, this is the story on a very surface level, and there are lots of plot twists, lore, and mysteries in the series. The series has 3 books. The first one, The Final Empire, is a heist story. The second one, Well of Ascension, is a political drama. And the third one is like a mix of epic fantasy and political drama. Mistborn's power system plays a huge part in affecting the plot. I mostly watch or read anime manga when it comes to fantasy, and their power systems are just there in the background and don't affect the plot that much. I like those kinds of stories more, but in Mistborn, the power system plays a huge part in the story, and I will talk about it more in my spoiler section. Other than that, Mistborn has a great cast. It doesn't have a huge cast, but 4-5 characters are really good. And Win, Elend, and Kelsier are my all-time favorite characters now. Elend and Kelsier are my favorite male characters, and Win is in my top 3 favorite female characters. I will talk about them in detail in the spoiler section. Besides that, it has great themes like freedom, oppression, revenge, religion, finding the truth, racism, prejudice, found family, war, and many more. It has a great story. Each story feels like a different genre book and is not formulaic like some other series, and to add on that, it has lot of mysteries. And one more thing I didn't know that Isayama took that you will awaken your powers once you go through a traumatic event from this story. So that's it for the non-spoiler section. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it yet. It's also a perfect gateway for people who aren't into reading books or reading fantasy, as Sanderson's writing style is very straightforward, which is also a huge drawback for many people, but I don't mind it as he doesn't only tell but also shows his theme. Anyways, it makes it easier for new readers to read it. Now let's come to the spoiler section. So as you know, main thing for me in a series is characters and themes. And I love Mistborn characters, and my top 3 are Ellen, Kelsier, and Win. So let's start with Kelsier. Kelsier at first glance seemed like a symbol of hope, freedom for the Ska people, convincing them to fight and rebel against their oppressors. But we know that that's not all there is to Kelsier. We learned that he had a past where his lover died in the rebellion, killed by the Lord Ruler. At first he thought that she had betrayed him because he saw the Lord Ruler thanking her, but it became clear later that she didn't betray him and was loyal until the end. This death increased his hatred toward the nobleman and the Lord Ruler. He wanted to overthrow the ruler for the freedom of the Ska, but also for revenge. However, his desire for revenge became his main motive and overtook him to the point where he cared more about it than about the freedom of the Ska. He completely overlooked the idea that there could be some noblemen who were good people like Ellen. His revolution and rebellion became more about his revenge against the nobility and expressing his hatred towards them. He did this by randomly killing noblemen. However, it is a fact that most of them were evil. He started caring more about killing noblemen rather than freeing the oppressed. For him and his crew, all noblemen were evil. He was becoming like the very thing he swore to destroy, and he didn't realize it until Win snapped at him. Now, Win and Kelsier's relationship was also quite interesting. We will talk about how Kelsier changed Win, but here we will discuss how Win changed Kelsier. Win fell in love with one of the noblemen, and as expected, Kelsier didn't like it. He was against this and made plans that could lead to the death of Ellen and make him a pawn in his plan, which scared Win, and she snapped at him, making Kelsier realize that he and his group were also not Ska and that their group was actually richer than the average Ska. She said much more, and I am just summarizing it. This made Kelsier think about his actions and re-establish his ideology. He needed to make sure that while fighting evil, he wouldn't become that evil himself. This was the main theme of his character. He understood that he had to become something more. He had to become a symbol of hope and freedom instead of vengeance. He needed to care more about saving Ska rather than killing the nobleman. This is where Kelsier truly became a symbol of hope and freedom. That's why his death changed things forever and made the Ska rebel for their freedom, looking to Kelsier as their messiah. He became like a god figure for them. He changed Win's worldview and taught her that living with insecurities and distancing herself from everyone would be meaningless. He also saved a nobleman, Ellen, who would later become the symbol of freedom. We could see that even at the end, When the gods of this planet were changed, he was still remembered as one who freed them. Now let's come to Ellen. Ellen was born into a rich noble house. Ellen was always a rebel. He always questioned society's norms and structure. He always questioned why noblemen had the privilege while Scar people didn't, and how are they different from them. His father just wanted him to continue these things and be a part of this cycle. But he didn't want to be a part of this cycle and wanted to break it and create a new society where everyone is equal and one without privilege would be taken care of. And this is what made him my favorite character. Now, Alan had the curse of being too smart and good, but the people around him weren't, and that's why he indulged himself in the books. From those books, he learned about philosophy and different structures of economics and politics, as he wanted to create a better and more equal world for the Ska and fight for their freedom. He wanted to create a better society. His knowledge did come in handy when he stopped our main gang from killing everyone, as they would need some trained soldiers even after defeating the Lord Ruler. As after his death, people would start fighting for the throne. We did see that come into play and how Lutherdel was about to fall under a dictator again. That dictator was none other than Elend's own father. At first, Elend didn't know how to handle the situation, or we can't say that, as he was just being a good person and remaining consistent with his principles. But as we know, that was causing them trouble. As a good person can't be a good king, as kings have to make some selfish decisions and need to make some sacrifices, which is indeed the harsh reality of the world. In Kelsier's case, we saw how the goal shouldn't blind you, and while fighting that evil, you need to make sure that you don't become that evil yourself. In Elend's case, they showed that sometimes you are put into moral dilemma, where you have to sacrifice something for the greater good, like Elend doing something bad in order to save his city from falling into the hands of a dictator, or taking in another nations for the overall benefit of the civilians to fight a greater evil. Later on, we saw him developing his character and making some sacrifices for the greater good. Elend, who was a very moral man, was repeatedly put into moral dilemmas where no matter what decision he made, there would be consequences. But this new Elend was just a response to the outer environment. From the inside, he was still the same. This created a conflict between his inner and outer personality, and he didn't know which to choose or what was the right one. However, he had Vin, who comforted him and told him that he only needed to be the new him when the situation called for it, and could be his old self while being with her and in simple situations. We saw Elend from being an absolute moral rebel to become a good political player, making some hard decisions for the greater good. I didn't like his or Vin's ending much, as it didn't serve their characters well, they just died. The only thing it served was to show how high the stakes were in the series and to provide an emotional send-off, though the last scene of their bodies did make me cry. Now let's come to Vin. Most of the Vin's characters was developed in the first book. In the other two books, it's mostly about her being badass and her relationship with Elend. In the first book, we dwelled deep into her psyche and explored how all the insecurities were indoctrinated in her by her brother, which made her a very rational person. Too rational. She never let her emotions cloud her judgment, but that's also distanced her from everyone, as she never let anyone get close enough to form a deep bond. She feared betrayal, and her coping mechanism was to never let anyone close in the first place, preferring to leave them first. Her worldview changed after she met Kelsier. She didn't change immediately upon meeting him, but the change did occur slowly. With Kelsier and his crew, Vin's life improved significantly. She didn't have to worry about getting hurt or beaten. This new life was very comforting for Vin, but as we know, her insecurities won't let her connect. The first time she started changing a bit was when she had to play another character. She had to sneak into parties, and now she had to portray a girl who was completely different from her. I really love how Brandon Sanderson writes the psyche of a character. It makes us, or at least me, more invested in the series. We saw how this new character that Vin played slowly took over her personality. She was more outgoing now and enjoyed forming new bonds, until reality hit her and she realized how cruel everyone at the party was, except for the one guy she fell in love with, Elend. Elend formed such a strong bond with Vin that she fought her own group for him and challenged their views. This later changed Kelsier's perspective, and he saved Elend, who later helped the city from falling into the hands of another dictator, his own father. With Kelsier and Elend, she formed a great bond and could put her life at risk for them, but she wouldn't for others. However, this changed after she saw Kelsier sacrificing himself for his friends and telling her that he wanted to create a group that wasn't together just for external reasons but because of their bond. This also changed Wayne and she risked her life in the end and freed people from the Lord Ruler. In the next book, we saw her becoming insecure about her femininity as she wasn't like usual girls. She was different, but in the end, she accepted herself the way she is. She had pretty badass moments throughout the series, though, as I have said, I didn't like Ellen's and Vin's ending much. However, seeing their dead bodies at the end did make me cry. Now, other characters that I really liked were Sazed and Tindwyl. Sazed really gave me Alfred vibes. Now, coming to the story, Mistborn felt like a dark gothic horror story with a message of hope by the end. These are my favorite types of stories. Another example of this is Berserk. One of the main themes of the book was to find out the truth about the universe. Our characters discover it by analyzing the power system of the world, especially Sazed and his people, which is just like our world. Finding out about the truth through science, which is our world's power system. The Mistborn story consists of themes which I've already discussed earlier: heist, political drama, mysteries, and high fantasy action, which makes it one of, if not the best. However, I found its ending a bit underwhelming as our main characters were just killed like side characters, and it was more of a build up for a larger universe, which is the Cosmera universe. I am not saying that it was bad, I am just saying that it wasn't as good as the rest of the story. Now, there are some problems that some people have with Brandon Sanderson's writing style, which is that he shows and tells too much. For those who don't know, one of the main writing rules is that you have to show the themes or messages of the story instead of just stating them outright through a character. Like Kelsier himself telling Wynne that he will focus more on the Scar's freedom instead of getting revenge on the noblemen. Here, Brandon Sanderson through his character directly conveys the theme of the character, his arc, and his character development. But I don't mind it much as he only tells this after showing it through his story or character. It does become easier for the general audience to understand the main message of the show, which they often don't get. So that's it for today. Tell me who your favorite character from the series is.